right, welcome into Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim by the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses that they are living in a modern day spiritual paradise hosted by them. I'm your host here, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, and a little guy raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses throughout the 70s and 80s, as I do, and maybe even more so this week on some fronts. I like to issue a little bit of a trigger warning. We try to have fun here. We're trying to heal. We do explore some sensitive subjects from time to time. Any sarcasm, humor, and other observations are strictly mine, never meant to offend. I want to here issue just a quick programming note, excuse me. I will be traveling over the next week and may take a 1-week hiatus from exploring the paradise provided to mankind via the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. Not sure yet. I'm letting my travels dictate starting tomorrow. But if so, I will be back in 2 weeks, and I hope each of you will be too, or anybody that might be interested in listening. So thank you once again for being here. We're going to take a sensitive walk through the paradise of Jehovah's Witnesses this week, an emotional walk. If I'm being honest, I don't really enjoy these types of topics, not at all. But for some reason, this one caught my eye this week. As I do, just a quick reminder to any Jehovah's Witness or someone who's on the fence or doubting that might be listening, the governing body likes to pound home the following scripture at every opportunity, meeting, convention, and each publication. Matthew 24:45 through 47 of the New World Translation, their version of the Bible, we get this, quote, "Who really is the faithful and discreet slave whom his master appointed over his domestics to give them their food at the proper time? Happy is that slave if his master on coming finds him doing so. Truly I say to you, he will appoint him over all of his belongings," end quote, including a multi-billion-dollar real estate empire, a kind of a little amusement park type thing now in Warwick, and on it goes. We all recognize the words. And again, for a Jehovah's Witness listening, that chapter in Matthew is filled with illustrations and a parable, including a fig tree, a thief, and of course, 2 types of slaves. The governing body has turned those words in Matthew into a prophecy that is about them, the 9 men in upstate New York. Jesus sure knew how to tease this salvation stuff, didn't he? But put that aside. The important point this week is that everything they say, do, create, and give to the rest of us is what they consider to be food at the proper time. That meal you needed, just in the nick of time, just when you needed it. So imagine this week when this caught my eye. I was paying a visit to the only website on the internet fueled by Holy Spirit. And there on the front page, under the section Bible Teachings, Bible Questions Answered, was the article titled, "Why Did the Holocaust Happen? Why didn't God stop it?" And aside from the fact that this seemed to be an odd subject to feature on the front page in August 2024, right next to article and videos such as, "Do Jehovah's Witnesses Assist with Disaster Relief?" and a really cute one called "Animal Artistry," featuring the beauty of animals, it just seemed like an odd placement. It reminded me of how our mothers used to pack us a sandwich for school, and somewhere between the turkey and the slice of cheese, she buried some celery that we never really wanted. I hate celery, by the way. Ugh, hate it. But hey, food at the proper time in 2024. Once you're done looking at the pretty animals in that article, take a look at some black and white photos of dear people in concentration camps. It's all just so encouraging. And the governing body has never been one to shy away from genocides, right? Mass murder. This caught my eye because as a younger guy, I must have asked myself the question, the title of that article, many, many times. This was especially true during the 1990s, for those of us that were there, with the release of the Watchtower Society's video, Purple Triangles. I'm sure there's more than a few that remember that. I'm not sure the younger generation or the current generation will remember that. Don't know how much they push it now, but older ones will. And Purple Triangles was a British documentary and featured a story about the German family, the Kuseros, including their 11 children. Jehovah's Witnesses then took the video, put it on a VHS, that was a thing, and they distributed it throughout the Watchtower Society and to their kingdom halls. I'm not going to get into their entire story. For one, it guts me. It is absolutely tragic. It is horrible. And I have personally long since lost the video. But remember, how do I say this? It's sensitive. Jehovah's Witnesses in our congregation actually getting together socially to watch this in a group together. Some real kumbaya stuff. I personally watched it exactly once because, as I already mentioned, it really upset me. I did not enjoy it. And it still upsets me, just revisiting this week. The entire Kusero family were sent to concentration camps. They were given the purple triangle patch given to Jehovah's Witnesses in the camps. And without details, there was one story that stuck out and I've never been able to shake. And it still haunts me. One of their sons, Wolfgang Kusero, and I'm sure there's a few people that remember this tidbit from the video, who was executed by a guillotine in 1942 at the age of 20 for objecting to being inducted into the German army because he was a Jehovah's Witness. It was just a horrible story. They read his final letter. It was awful. And I'm going to move on. Jehovah's Witnesses were among those who died in Nazi concentration camps for loyalty to a publishing company, ironically in the United States in New York. And without going down a rabbit hole, the governing body has gotten a lot of mileage out of this tragedy. As we all know, persecution is one of their favorite proof points that they alone are the one true religion on this earth. From the Watchtower of 2006, February 15th, page 32, titled, "What Does the Purple Triangle Mean?" we get this. Quote, "In Germany, under the Nazi regime, Jehovah's Witnesses refused to Heil Hitler, and they maintained neutrality on political and military issues. So the Nazis persecuted them, incarcerating some 12,000 witnesses for varying lengths of time in prisons and concentration camps. About 2,000 of them died, hundreds being executed." End quote. I do not on any level endorse evil in any form, no matter someone's belief system, gender, race, or anything else. This is horrific. It's disgusting. And it's important to note that persecution is not unique to Jehovah's Witnesses. Many religions have been persecuted for their religious beliefs. I personally, and I'm not alone, I'm sure, have visited the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., and I got to tell you personally, I thought I was prepared for it, and I was not. I was not prepared emotionally. It is a blight on mankind's history, a tragedy. 6 million people were persecuted. Again, I'm going to move on. It happened. And there aren't enough words to describe the horrific impact this has had on people's lives. Purple Triangles, that video just ripped me up. So imagine what it was like to be treated to a second helping of this food at the proper time in 1996, when the governing body produced their own video on the Holocaust titled, "Jehovah's Witnesses Stand Firm Against Nazi Assault." Who remembers that one? Yet another horrific and tragic video, with them trying to land home that persecution during this dark time proves that they alone are Jehovah's chosen people. with the leaders being in New York of the United States, even while Jewish people and their Jehovah's Witness publishers in Europe were being tortured and killed. I doubt that I'm alone in having a lot of unanswered questions about something this evil. And I got to tell you, I questioned this many, many, many times as a Jehovah's Witness. I would lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to connect brain cells on how a God of love could sit by and allow this to happen. This only got worse for me when I became a parent. I can't imagine watching people hurt children, not for a second, much less centuries. Why was Jehovah making sure Watchtower magazine stayed hidden during the Holocaust, but not his people? We all heard the experiences of how literature was snuck in and smuggled, but people were killed. It doesn't connect in the brain. Would making sure that not one hair on a Jehovah's Witnesses' heads was harmed during this awful time not be a more powerful witness than the Watchtower magazine? I thought so. I still think so. And would that not answer Satan's challenge? Didn't he do that with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Who remembers? We all remember the Bible Stories book. They're going to study the new one. They would not bow down to King Nebuchadnezzar's golden idol. The Adolf Hitler of his time. So they took the three Hebrews and tossed them in a fiery furnace, a furnace much like the concentration camps of Germany, that Nebuchadnezzar had heated up to 7 times hotter than normal, including the people that got close to it burned up. But you remember how that story ended. Jehovah intervened. He sent one of his angels, and they walked out without even a stinky smoke smell on their body. Those weren't even the last days. But those Jehovah's Witnesses in concentration camps were making a stand against Satan in the last days of the 20th century. You remember, before Jesus decided to let us in on the fact that generations now overlap. And Jehovah let those people in those burning furnaces die. Why? The question has been and always will be why. And they've planted an article on the front page this month, to try to explain it. I can hear it now. Well, come on, Stacy, universal sovereignty and stuff. And yeah, I know, I gave the talks. But very few people remember Nebuchadnezzar and those in his administration back then. Pretty limited impact on history. Even fewer people probably know who Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are. But those three got saved with Jehovah intervening to make his point clear. These were his people. Seems like that story got limited reach to mankind at the time. Not many people knew about it. Not many people know about it today. But listen, from where I sit, almost everyone knows the tragedy of the Holocaust. Again, in the all-important last days, when Jehovah's name must be proclaimed. And he decided to turn an eye on the world stage during a world war with everyone on earth watching, and allow at least 2,000 Jehovah's Witnesses to die, many of them in furnaces, just like the 3 Hebrews he saved from a furnace in the Bible. I bring all of that up because, look, I had a lot of questions. And frankly, I still do. All of this triggered when I saw this on the Holy Spirit website. And according to that website this week, it looks like apparently I'm not alone, because the governing body is still trying to explain it all yet again in what they call this timely article. And that is what I want to focus on. Despite it being a tragedy from the last century, their attempt to explain why it was allowed to happen is still considered food at the proper time? And wouldn't you know it, their explanation in this article, it's very brief, by the way, has a few holes, and it only leads to more questions about all of it. That is, if you can look past being insulted with every sentence. Are you ready for their explanation? In this episode, we're going to take a walk through their version of spiritual paradise, and here we go. The article, Why Did the Holocaust Happen? Why Didn't God Stop It? Begins with the following paragraph. Quote, many who ask these questions have suffered extreme personal loss and seek not just answers, but solace. Others see the Holocaust as the height of human evil, and they struggle to believe in God. End quote. And for those that have been associated with Jehovah's Witnesses, you may find this sentence a little weird. I did. I thought it was a little weird. Why do people suffering personal loss right now immediately default to thinking about the Holocaust? It is no laughing matter. I'm going through something. I'm going to think about the Holocaust. The answer to my question is they don't. It's highly likely that they're trying to navigate their own personal loss or challenge in the moment we're in 2024. They never once thought about revisiting a tragedy from the 20th century that is difficult to even talk about, much less think about, and sure as hell can't be explained. And with the opening two sentences of this article, we can instantly see their true motives behind why they wrote the article. You're going through something and wondering why Jehovah won't help you, kind of like he didn't help those innocent people in the camps during the Holocaust. That's right. The governing body are comparing whatever the reader is going through today with those that were harmed during the Holocaust. And with that, I was instantly pissed off. I'm not denying that we all have very different things we deal with. But did they just low-key try to subtly compare whatever I got going on with what those poor people had going on in the Holocaust? Because that's how I read it. And I recognize the governing body's tactics. The writing committee of this organization has been doing this for decades. And here comes that word, insulting. What follows in this article is an explanation of why Jehovah allowed the Holocaust, and apparently Jesus wants Jehovah's Witnesses to revisit his explanation in 2024, and off we go. The article continues with a comparison of myths versus facts regarding Jehovah. Gone are Judge Joe and Freddie Franz, so I'm waiting for one of the governing body to step forward and tell us who is speaking to angels in 2024, but no one has stepped forward. We're still waiting. Dismiss all common sense, because here is a look at the rest of the article, starting with their first myth versus fact. The heading is Common Misconceptions About God and the Holocaust. The myth? It's wrong to ask why God allowed the Holocaust. Fact. People of great faith have questioned why God allows evil. For instance, the prophet Habakkuk asked God, why do you allow violence, lawlessness, crime, and cruelty to spread everywhere? Rather than rebuke Habakkuk, God had the questions he asked recorded in the Bible for all to read. End quote. Okay then. Thank you. Thank you for confirming that we humans, all of us made in Jehovah's image, his mind, his thinking, his consciousness, shouldn't feel guilty about wondering why Jehovah, the God of love, decided to sit it out as millions were harmed by the German dictator. I'm feeling better already. What a bizarre myth to begin this discussion with. Let me ask you, dear listener, did you feel it was wrong to wonder why Jehovah sat this one out? Did you feel bad for wondering that? Why he, in fact, saved the three Hebrews, but looked the other way when 2,000 Jehovah's Witnesses were put in concentration camps? Did you feel bad that your logical mind had always wondered what he was thinking? Did it seem to be an incredible opportunity to prove to the world that he was the one true God by rescuing those poor people as the world watched on? How many lives would have been saved? And since then, if he had just jumped in to save them? And aren't at least a little relieved that you can now consider yourself a person of great faith, as the fact section just showed us, because your logical brain wondered why those three were saved, but not the 2,000? I think those of us that have always wondered about this just got a little attaboy from the governing body. What a hug. We're like Habakkuk. And he even had his question recorded in the Bible, meaning we weren't all bad for wondering why Jehovah so passively sat out the Holocaust. But for someone that has been a Jehovah's Witness, you know, we're all being set up here. These articles are setups. You see, this article isn't really about those poor, unique, beautiful, loyal souls. It's about the message the governing body wants you to walk away thinking about by the time you finish this little article. The message is simple. All the misery or challenges you're enduring today in 2024, Jehovah allows them. Because again, he can't handle a bully. But I'll get there. Just know all of these articles are setups designed to get you to explain away all bad things. And with the 9 of them and their publishing company being the ultimate answer. And now back to the article and the next myth they want to dispel. Quote, myth: God doesn't care about human suffering. Fact: God hates wickedness and the suffering it causes. Here it comes, folks. Quote, back in the days of Noah, God felt hurt at his heart because of the violence spreading in the earth. No doubt God also felt tremendous pain over the Holocaust. End quote. As we move forward, please keep in mind, you came to the only website built on Holy Spirit to find answers. You're looking for answers. Why? Because apparently there are still those looking to understand why Jehovah was silent during the Holocaust. But again, I want to emphasize you came here and you're reading this article as a Jehovah's Witness or anyone else because you're looking for answers. I want some deep insights. I want to quiet the pain in my heart or the voices in my head over this tragedy. I want the following. 1 Corinthians 2:15 and 16 of the New World Translation says this, quote, however, the spiritual man examines all things, but he himself is not examined by any man. For who has come to know the mind of Jehovah so that he may instruct him? But we do have the mind of Christ. End quote. I am relieved, and I quoted that scripture a lot when I was a witness. We may not have the mind of Jehovah. We can't answer right from his head, but we do have the mind of Jesus Christ, his son. In fact, it's Jesus that tells the governing body what Jehovah is thinking all the time. And they relay that information to us, right? They've told us many times. I'm not going to quote them all here. And so I'm on the website. I'm looking to understand the thinking of the guys in heaven as to why they ignored the Holocaust. And this myth and fact was their answer, the one I just read. Did you catch it? The non-answer answer? Once you leave the weekly grind of being a Jehovah's Witness, you recognize these lame ploys that they use. The myth is that Jehovah doesn't care about how much we are all suffering, including the victims of the Holocaust in this article. The fact they share To dispel the myth? What did they use to dispel the myth that Jehovah, in fact, does care about man? They use my guy Noah. There he is. That's right. He's making his weekly appearance, and I don't even plan it this way. The fact that the governing body wants us to know doesn't even answer the myth that they themselves proposed. But if you're not reading carefully, you might miss it as your mind drifts away to that time a 500 plus year old man built a boat, he collected a couple of aardvarks, and he floated around for the better part of a year in a boat filled with animal shit. Because, well, they said God hates wickedness and suffering. So enter the only good guy on earth who built a floaty as the same God that hates human suffering. Drowned everyone. He drowned everyone outside the boat. Not a dictator, not Nebuchadnezzar. Jehovah drowned everyone. So he didn't have to watch that violence and suffering anymore, and neither did our guy Noah. And this is what they use to reason on the fact that Jehovah hates human suffering, despite the fact that he inflicted it. But if that doesn't give you a headache trying to figure it out, how about the next sentence in that fact section? It said, quote, "No doubt, God also felt tremendous pain over the Holocaust," end quote. We just talked about Noah. We know what Jehovah did. Wait a minute. I think I'm fairly smart, and I just clicked on the page on your website to read this article that is going to answer my question that's right there in the title as to why Jehovah sat out the Holocaust. You tell me it's a myth that he doesn't care about our pain and suffering. So he solves it by personally creating more pain and suffering while Noah and his family watched, and conclude that fact by saying, no doubt Jehovah hurt watching the Holocaust too? What? This is nothing more than insulting people's intelligence. As I've already said, Jehovah decided to end pain and suffering by he himself killing everyone with some pain and suffering. Why didn't he do that during the Holocaust? Maybe a fire shower over the dictator's house while his pals are there having a dinner, while the innocent people escaped, maybe in a big cruise ship if we want to relate it to what Noah did. No? How in the world did the Holocaust relate to Noah's story on any level? In the Bible, again, written for you, 9 guys in upstate New York who tell us we do have the mind of Christ, the same guy that wanted you to feature this article on the website. But you know, Jesus got a little coy with you while writing this article. He knows why Jehovah did nothing during the Holocaust, but you say, quote, "No doubt he was hurting as he watched on." No doubt. Didn't he solve Noah's problem by getting involved? Didn't he solve Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's problem by getting involved? And how can there be any doubt as to Jehovah's feelings when this whole article is coming from his son, Jesus Christ, right? How can there be any doubt when you say no doubt? I guess you're making an assumption there. In just 2 small sentences, the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses expose themselves as the absolute morons that they truly are. And somehow this little throwaway article is supposed to answer some very deeply painful questions about the Creator, Jehovah God. So far, if you're keeping track at home, this article has created several additional questions. And how the hell does it always come back to Noah? It will forever intrigue me. Noah, every week. The article continues. Quote, "Myth. The Holocaust was God's punishment of the Jews." I have to just insert here before I go to the fact. Apparently, Judge Joseph Rutherford, watching on in heaven and influencing the governing body, has had a change of heart because, according to him, when he was leading this organization, it really was all the Jews' fault. See past episodes. Now back to fact. God did allow Jerusalem to be destroyed by the Romans in the first century. Since then, however, God does not single out any ethnic group for special favor or for punishment. In God's view, there is no difference between Jews and Gentiles. End quote. Myth fact. Well, would you look at that? First, for those that are big Bible readers out there, Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans, as history shows us, in 70 CE. And I encourage any Jehovah's Witness to study Matthew 24 closely and the history surrounding it at the time to see that this was the exact event Jesus was actually commenting on in the story. You can do fun things like see when Matthew was written, was it before or after, oopsie, and all sorts of other interesting stuff. Matthew 24 was most certainly not about a world that was coming after 1914 of the 20th century. It's painfully obvious. And it's worth looking at when this happened. A lot of the details of the book of Matthew. I'm going to leave that alone. It's a rabbit hole. But this is a minor point in this answer that they say is a fact. The governing body wants you to know that Jehovah does not, or I guess no longer, singles out ethnic groups for special favor or punishment. So no, he wasn't watching the Holocaust and thinking, well, it serves you right. Your group killed my son. He was not doing that, despite what Judge Joe said when he chose him to run his organization. Does this fact explain why he just watched the Holocaust and did nothing at all? Did that give you an explanation? Do you now understand? No, it does not. This is what we call a diversion, and it's a classic in the writings of the Watchtower. We have an agenda, that being the writers of the article, so we slipped this one in, even as you continue looking for the title of the article, Why Did Jehovah Do Nothing During the Holocaust? Why? Still haven't got the answer, folks. It can definitely cause a headache if you think beyond this really deep article. But this is a change in heart for Jehovah, and it's easy to prove. For example, for centuries, Jehovah actually did single out ethnic group for favor, and he condemned any other ethnic group to punishment, that's too soft, to destruction. We all know, of course, he favored the Jews because of Abraham and stuff, and he gave his descendants, that of Abraham, the permission and the outright command to destroy other groups that were camping on the Jews' property. These include peoples like the Hittites, Girgashites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Then, of course, there was his disfavor with Egypt, Assyria, Nineveh, the Romans, with the Jews being the only ethnic group he favored and the only group that Jesus came to. But suddenly, in this weak attempt to explain why Jehovah sat out the Holocaust, he then changed his mind and said he was okay with both Jews and that everyone that wasn't a Jew. He stopped doing that stuff he was doing before. So the Holocaust, they want you to know, wasn't a punishment for the Jews. The only rub there? Well, good, but it doesn't again explain why Jehovah let the Holocaust happen. I've been waiting and I'm halfway through the article. As for their comment on him not favoring any special groups today, I gotta tell you, what do I do with that? He does have a special group that we're told he chose called the governing body. And that special group can only be made up of another special group. They have to be anointed. And the anointed have to be made up of a special group. They all have to be men. And everyone else answers to them or is doomed in Armageddon. I think they forgot this stuff when they wrote the article. Because Jehovah indeed does have special groups. But he doesn't favor any group over any other group. Well, I forgot one more. unless you happen to have been born with a vagina. Then you should wear something on your head in front of a man, even though, again, he isn't favored, but you need to wear something on your head. He doesn't play favorites, not even with the 144,000, that group, not so special, but special, not so special, special group that gets to go to heaven and look at him and Charles Taze Russell in the eye every day, while the rest of us are down here on earth eating apples for infinity and beyond. You really wonder when they write these if they put any thought whatsoever into what they're telling people. But the article continues. The next myth versus fact is one of my favorites. Quote, myth. If a loving and all-powerful God existed, he would have prevented the Holocaust. Fact. Although God never causes suffering, he sometimes allows it temporarily. End quote. First and foremost, apparently the governing bodies never read the Bible. There is simply no way to read the Bible and say that God never causes suffering. Not only did he do it himself, he commanded his favorite people on earth to do it to other people. See the many wars. I'm not going to list them. Yeah. In the end, it's this myth that made me want to talk about it. That's why I'm here. Remember, the article is called Why Did the Holocaust Happen? Why didn't God stop it? I know it happened. And well, this myth versus fact summed it up pretty nicely, in my opinion. I am keeping score at home, and I'm trying hard to understand it all. Under myth here, you said if there was a loving, all-powerful God, he would have prevented the Holocaust. And I gotta say, hot damn, I agree. You see, I didn't come to that conclusion lightly. I've watched imperfect human parents and how they will do anything to keep their children from harm. And again, we're just imperfect people. We're not perfect spirit creatures of the Creator. And to take it even a step further, I've even watched animals keep their children from harm. Both love their offspring very, very much and will do anything to make sure they're okay. But alas, Jehovah, he didn't stop it. And he doesn't stop it. And you can repeat that fact as you did here. But I didn't come here to read what I already know. I came here for the answers. Why did an all-powerful, loving God not prevent the Holocaust? I'm going to move to their fact where you state that God never causes suffering. Well, I'm sure a Jehovah's Witness currently being shunned by this organization and everyone that they love, including their family, would beg to differ. Apparently, Jehovah does cause suffering on a large scale and a small scale. But as I've done before, I'm going to focus here for a witness that may be listening or anyone who's on the fence on one of the basic tenets of Christianity, a rule that Jehovah himself gave us. It comes from my favorite book of the Bible, James, chapter 4 and verse 17 of the New World Translation, where it says this, quote, therefore, if someone knows how to do what is right and yet does not do it, it is a sin for him. End quote. Uh-oh. The inspired words of Jehovah himself. If someone knows how to do what is right, including saving precious human lives from death in a concentration camp, but doesn't do it, it seems clear that it's a sin. We have a little bit of a conundrum here. Does Jehovah sin? Is making sure his name looks good more important than saving the lives of his children? Don't you worry. In this article, the governing body is going to try to explain this. I'm leading us there. But make no mistake, the human brain made in Jehovah's image struggles to understand how anyone can passively watch on as other people are hurt. In fact, there are arguably two reactions in this world. help save the person, or turn a blind eye? And I'm pretty sure all of us will agree that keeping someone from any harm is the right thing to do. So turning a blind eye, well, that is a bad thing. And we just read that it's sinful. Further emphasis on this point can be found in Jehovah's Holy Book and relayed to us again from the mind of Christ, his Son, when he gave us the simple story, one of my favorites, I mention it a lot, of the Good Samaritan. Those who walked by the man in need, bad. The one that helped him, good. And so a Jehovah's Witness is spending a lifetime hearing these explanations from fellow men in New York City, upstate New York, and their brains tend to just turn off. Why? Because it makes no sense. In fact, it's absurd. But that doesn't stop the men in upstate New York from trying to explain it all. Why? I'm not even sure, except they have a point to make regarding suffering in 2024. You'll have to see this article on the Holocaust on the front page of the website. Please go read it. Remember, the myth in this section was that an all-powerful, loving God would have stopped the Holocaust. But I ask anyone listening, is that truly a myth? Would you have stopped it if you had the power to do so? Aren't all of us lesser than God, imperfect and flawed? And yet I venture a guess that anyone listening would have done everything in their power, if they had it, to have stopped this horrible event. The only question that anyone should have about this situation is, why wouldn't a loving God stop the Holocaust? Well, I'm glad you asked, because the article, courtesy of the governing body, wraps up with an explanation that, again, every Jehovah's Witness is told comes from Jesus himself. The article continues. See if you can spot the all-wise answer to arguably one of the most important questions in the entire universe, and certainly in man's history. Under the heading, why did God allow the Holocaust? Gosh, we're finally there. Quote, God allowed the Holocaust for the same reason that he has permitted all human suffering, to settle moral issues that were raised long ago. The Bible clearly indicates that at present the devil, not God, rules the world. Two basic facts from the Bible can help explain why God allowed the Holocaust. End quote. Oh boy. Two facts from the Bible. They're going to tell us why God allowed this. And I love the teaser. We all recognize it if we were a witness. He allows these people to suffer, and he allows us to suffer today because of moral issues that were raised long ago. What they are, they don't mention them here. But we know what they are. We know the insinuation. So now, we're going to get to what they call their two facts, posed with several more questions. This is their attempt at an answer. And in this one paragraph, where they mention that God allowed it because of suffering and moral issues and the two basic facts, they slip in there that God doesn't even rule the world. The devil does. And if the devil rules the world, but Jehovah allows him to rule the world, who really rules the world? Who really rules it? If the vice president does something because the president allows him, is the president responsible? In other words, if I buy my 10-year-old all the ingredients, the barbecue, the meat, the propane tank, I turn on the propane tank, I hand him the tongs, I hand him the meat, and I show him how to sprinkle on the spices, who is really in control of grilling tonight's dinner? That line gets a little fuzzy, doesn't it? Do we need to deep dive on defining the word allowing? The word allowing. The devil, Jehovah's invisible son, rules the world, has all sorts of parameters. For example, he apparently is grounded to our house on earth and can't bother Jehovah in heaven. Also, including the fact that we only know he exists because I can Google people having sex on the internet and I can see countries are still warring. There's still R-rated movies in the world. And I still get a cold. I get sick in the winter. Jehovah watches all of this too, just like he did the Holocaust, because he isn't the ruler of the world, says the governing body. He's not. He bears no responsibility. He is just handing Satan the ingredients and letting him grill tonight. The article continues with their explanation. Quote, God created humans with free will. God told the first humans, Adam and Eve, what he expected of them, but he did not force them to obey. They chose to decide for themselves what was good and bad, and their bad choice and similar choices by people throughout history has brought horrible consequences to mankind. It is, as the book Statement of Principles of Conservative Judaism says, much of the world's suffering directly results from our misuse of the free will granted to us. Rather than revoke our free will, God has given humans time to manage their affairs independent of him. End quote. There it is. There it is in what is not remotely a laughing matter. Folks, if you are paying attention to their explanation, the Holocaust is all our fault anyway. Didn't you know? The governing body wants us to know that Jehovah gave us all free will. And in the end, it's his kids' fault that the chainsaw he gave them has been used to hurt others, not cut down trees. It's our fault. Imagine a Holocaust survivor having to live with that answer. Well, I gave you all free will and some of you misused it. And even though it's really not free will at all, because either you do what I say anyway, or, the Holocaust happens, how free is it? Maybe you don't like the answer. Well, then, the Holocaust was Adam and Eve's fault, after Jehovah showed them a tree and told them not to touch it. Again, he bears no responsibility. And we parents, we always put a bowl of candy on the dining room table and tell our kids to look at it, but never eat it. And there it sits day after day after day, free will and stuff. That's what this is. The Holocaust was all our fault. It was Jehovah's offspring's fault. And in case you haven't noticed, because the governing body is very good at doing this, they still have not answered why a God of love would allow any of this. Why was he watching on? All they have done is say, well, it's the fault of we humans. You have free will. Yeah, but why didn't he stop it again? Well, there's some moral issues to talk about. Yeah, but why didn't he help these people like he'd done with people in the past? Why? But wait for it. Here comes the only thing they really want you to walk away from this article assured of. Here's the point of all of it. Quote from the article, God can and will undo all the damage of the Holocaust. God promises to bring back to life millions who have died, including Holocaust victims. He will also eliminate the pain that Holocaust survivors feel because of horrific memories. God's love for mankind guarantees that he will fulfill these promises. End quote. In the end, folks, the message from the governing body is that the Holocaust, well, it's not a big deal, people. Yeah, it was one of the most horrific series of events in all of human history, but don't you worry yourselves about it. He's going to bring them all back and erase their memories. Someday. And according to Jehovah's Witness teachings, those families will never be reunited in marriage in paradise or with their intact family. Can't do that in paradise because they can't remarry. They must live alone throughout all of eternity. Sound fun, but they're all going to come back someday. And he'll erase the memory of it. That is the answer. That's the one you've been waiting for. Yeah, it happened. It was kind of your fault. And well, Jehovah can't handle a bully. And don't worry about it. None of us are going to remember it when we're eating, our fruit salads. The article concludes with this sentence, quote, "Many Holocaust victims and survivors were able to maintain their faith and find meaning in life by understanding why God has allowed evil and how he purposes to undo its effects." End quote. There really just aren't any words. People gave up their lives in this horrific event for a publishing company in the United States of America. I'm not going to go deep on the dictator's plans and what would have happened under any circumstances. This religion props these poor people up as examples to Jehovah's Witnesses on the homepage of Jesus' website in 2024. I have entire episodes on their obsession with pushing persecution narratives. We've all seen the videos in recent years. They're fancier now. These videos are getting high tech. But as you can see, they've been producing videos, articles, and books on this subject for many, many decades. And they roll out this tragedy every so often to remind Jehovah's Witnesses that they can explain why it happened. And yet, read this article for yourself. Where is the explanation? Supposition and talking about things like Job and Jehovah has to answer Satan's challenges lacks the consistency when you open the Holy Book and see that he saved several people, including 3 Hebrews, from burning furnaces. But apparently those Jewish folks in the Nazi concentration camps didn't get the same attention. You see wording like Jehovah is letting us work it out. It's all our fellow humans' fault because they use their free will the wrong way. And yet there he is up there just watching. Just watching. And then the reminder and the word, someday. Someday. Someday he's going to fix all this stuff. And that's it, folks. That is their explanation. And they want everyone to know about this. And they get a lot of mileage out of this. They even include children in this narrative. From making good use of a powerful video, The Awake of January 8th, 2001, on page 31, we're given this experience. Quote, "When she was just 12 years old, Tilly took advantage of an opportunity to give a witness at school. The class was studying World War II, and the subject of the Holocaust arose." Imagine that. Tilly told her teacher that not only Jews, but also Jehovah's Witnesses were tortured and killed during this horrendous period. The teacher agreed to let Tilly bring the video Purple Triangles to class. Before showing the video, the teacher said to the class, "Because of the great number of Jews who were killed during the Holocaust, many others who were persecuted have been overlooked. Jehovah's Witnesses are among such groups." The teacher was so impressed by the video that she lent it to another teacher to use in her class. Tilly remembered that her 4th grade teacher's brother had been killed by the Nazis during the Holocaust. She took the video to that teacher too, and he viewed it that very evening. In all, more than 60 people got to see Purple Triangles, and much interest was aroused. All of this took place because a young girl had the courage to speak up about her religion. End quote. Awake, 2001. I can't help but wonder if anyone else that saw the tragedies found in this video also wondered why Jehovah allowed it. Those teachers, with young Tilly trying to explain it all away. He saved some people, dear teacher, but not others, not these ones. Why? Again, why? When you're free from the indoctrination, you instantly realize that none of this makes any sense. And I encourage anyone interested in more information on Jehovah's Witnesses' belief in the only doctrine that applies here, universal sovereignty to see a past episode I've done on the subject titled Universal Sovereignty, Jehovah Can't Handle a Bully. Frankly, it's one of my favorite episodes and subjects from Jehovah's Witnesses. As you can see, it deeply troubled me when I was inside the organization. But if you're a Jehovah's Witness listening, and you've always been hurt that the Holocaust happened, and they're now bringing it up again in 2024 to share their inspired explanation, and you see it all as so loving, consider this as well. From the Awake of 1989, April 8th, pages 19 and 20, Will the Holocaust Dead Return, is the article. We're told this, quote, so how does all of this affect millions of Jews, Slavs, and other victims of the Holocaust? They are in God's memory, awaiting the resurrection, when they will be given the choice, obedience to God with life in view, or disobedience to Him with adverse judgment in view. It is our hope that millions of them will make the right choice. End quote. I am going to read this again. Awake, 89, April 8th, pages 19 and 20. Quote, so how does all of this affect millions of Jews, Slavs, and other victims of the Holocaust? They're in God's memory, awaiting the resurrection, when they will be given the choice, obedience to God with life in view, or disobedience to Him with adverse judgment in view. It is our hope that millions of them will make the right choice. End quote. And there it is. You see, those poor victims of the Nazi regime haven't been through enough yet, folks. They haven't been through enough. They were in concentration camps, starving, emaciated, tortured, killed. But according to the governing body, Jehovah, you see, he still isn't quite sure about them or their character. He's just not sure yet. So they're in his memory. Sure, he's going to bring them all back someday, but even then, he plans on putting those same people through another round of nightmares just to see if they're really sure they want to obey him. Get in line for their paradise-issued khakis or sundresses. Not too much shoulders now, sisters. Don't show that skin. And live forever alone. Because they'll be resurrected, eating kiwi and feeding squirrels. There it is, according to the governing body by way of Jesus Christ. We have the mind of Christ. These people haven't been through enough. So I'm going to bring them back, and I'm going to put them through it again. Better make a good choice. Got to go 2 for 2 here. You see, when you've already given your life to a vicious dictator and have now been awakened into a new world, you get to be reminded that it's never really enough with Jehovah. Thanks for your loyalty in those concentration camps, but 1,000 years have gone by. I'm going to let Satan make another run at you, just to be sure you're a good person and stuff. Just a reminder, Matthew 24, quote, who really is the faithful and discreet slave whom his master appointed over his domestics to give them their food at the proper time? Happy is that slave if his master on coming finds him doing so. Reliving the horrors of the Holocaust and attempting to explain it away, well, folks, that is what is considered food at the proper time. And as you can see, this article and its message made by Jesus, the Master, well, it makes him so happy because he found the slave following directions. And with that, I give you the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses, the self-proclaimed representatives of the Most High God, Jehovah. And on this subject, as always, I'm reminded of a quote, this time from a Holocaust survivor and an incredible human being Elie Wiesel, where he said, quote, I swore never to be silent whenever and wherever human beings endure suffering and humiliation. We must always take sides, end quote. Jehovah, care to comment? I want to thank you for joining me this week. Wherever you may be well.